YouTube, welcome back to the third final section of weathering freight cars. Now, for those of you who have tuned in to issues 1 and 2 of this three-part series, you know that we've already talked about pastels and powders in the first edition, and we've done oils and enamel washes in the second. And so now we're on to the final step, which is the airbrush. This is going to be the last of our 3 boxcars. I want to reiterate that these techniques that I'm using are sort of universal. You can use them on all the different types of cars that you might be weathering. You can even use them on your locomotives. So although I've chosen 3 boxcars because I had 3 of the same that needed weathering, all of these techniques, as you've seen, will give you different results and different weathering that's totally acceptable depending on what it is you're trying to make your models look like. So our final step here is I'm going to do one with an airbrush. Now, I think airbrush is probably the most common, and you know, I talked about it in the first edition that if you don't have an airbrush, you really need to invest in an airbrush, even a cheap airbrush, to start learning, because it is really the best way to do a lot of things, not just weathering, but just painting in general. You get a very nice even coat. You could do a lot more things with an airbrush than you can in any other format. So, to start with this car, now mind you, we've already taken the trucks off and we've already taken care of the couplers, so they're already done. But I am going to I'm going to do something different in this version than what I did in the previous versions, and that is I'm actually going to put the trucks back on this car because I'm going to do them with the airbrush as well. So I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me do that and then mask off the insides, so we don't get paint in the where the axles go. But that is my next step here. So I'm going to put these back on, then we'll come back with the airbrush. Now, when I do come back with the airbrush, I'm going to be using Vallejo Air. This is number 71.119. It is a white gray. I'm also using their flow improver, which is 71.562, and their airbrush thinner, which is 71.161. You don't have to use Vallejo. I know these paints are kind of expensive. I really have not found a paint that's actually better. It's just, you get great coverage, really good line of colors. These are really nice paints. So if I'm going to buy paints, I would rather save up and splurge on some sets of the nice Vallejo paints. But whatever you have, whether it's an enamel paint or another acrylic, as long as you can run it through an airbrush, then you're pretty much fine. Okay, so in this step, we're going to take our airbrush. I have done one of these typical season to taste with the paint mix. I just wanted to get a nice thin coat on here, so I'm running at about 25 psi, so not real heavy. And I just want to get it on the model here, nice and light. And this is a fading coat, so my only goal here is to bring these colors down a little bit. I've thinned this out fairly well, so the coat is very light, and that's going to stop me from building up so much that I white out the model. That's not the goal here. The goal is just to knock these colors down a little bit, take the shine out, sort of weather it up. And for those of you who are no strangers to the airbrush, you know that you can do some pretty cool things here. You got to watch as if you're doing like I'm doing here and blowing your masking off. That's not good. But this first step here is just enough to sort of lighten up the plastic. So I'm going to remask here and then finish this step up, and then we're going to move on to the next color. Okay, so I am now working with a 71.080. It is rust. I didn't really thin this one down. It is a so Vallejo, if they've got the black caps on it, they're for the airbrush. They've already got they got air written in them, so they're already thin. They'll go through your airbrush, but you can always thin them down more, like I did with the last color. This one I did not thin down much. I pretty much left it the way it is, and I'm using this just to sort of detail some of the low areas where I want to show a little bit of rust. So I'm putting that on the bottom, and now I'm going to do the ends just to make them look a little brown and worn here. Um, and I'm not real close with my airbrush, so I'm kind of letting it fan out a little bit. So when we get up here to do the roof, I'm actually going to come a lot closer, and I'm going to kind of put a little bit more of a stripe down the center because I want that to be a little more pronounced, just like we have on all the other ones. But you get that nice overspray there, which is what you really want here. So I'm going to darken up these doors a little bit more here. And the theme is on all three of these parts. We're sort of weathering it to the same colors and the same areas, and you're getting different effects, but you're kind of focusing on the same sets of colors. So it's more of a what is the technique, and once you get it to a location or a finish that you like, regardless of how much paint there is still left in your cup, you got to stop, clean your brush, move on to the next one. Okay, so my next color here is burnt umber. It is 70.941. So the white caps these are regular paints that you would use with a standard brush or thicker. So these ones you do have to thin down, which is not a problem, especially when you've got Vallejo's thinner. And I'm just going over the roof here, and I'm letting that wash down because that's going to wash down the sides, and it's going to darken up the sides of your car as well. And you're with your airbrush, to me this is a lot more like the powders, where your colors are going to be a little finer, and depending on the size of the needle in your brush, will sort of determine what kind of a condition you get on the car. But basically, I'm following the same patterns here. I'm just sort of darkening out the same areas where dirt would collect. I am spraying my trucks, and I'm sure you noticed that my my masking fell off there. So that's we're gonna be a little careful here. I don't want to ruin the insides of this. I'm just gonna darken up the ends a little bit. Okay, so once you get your model to this point, the airbrush is great for like the big picture items. But where it starts falling apart is on the finer details for this step. So to me, this is where I want the car. It's a little bit dirty. It's a little bit faded. It's been you can tell it's been over the road a little bit. But it looks more like the powdered version of the car as opposed to the very thick enameled version of the car, right? So like that's a more subtle effect. Now, what I do want to do with this one is I want to apply that oil technique again, to sort of bring out those same details. So I'm going to go to my same oil palette that I had on part 2. So we have, it's your burnt sienna, you have your raw umber, and I'm going to mix that in with just a smidgen of the Indian red. And those are your battle wound colors, as I call them. They're the darker colors, so that's rust that's been around for a lot longer. But on this car, I want to model some newer rust, so something that's just sort of happened. So I'm going to show you how we're going to do that here in just a second. But I can tell you right now, the colors we're going to use here are a cadmium orange hue and a Naples yellow hue. They're gonna play a real nice role in getting us some newer looking rust. So what I want to do on this is I want this to look like just small spots. I don't want to have giant sections of my car that are beat up. So we're going to go with a lesser tone on this one. So I'm going to go to a smaller stipple brush. So from last time, if you recall, these are the stencil brushes. They're nothing fancy. They came from Walmart, and hopefully you like as I'm sliding them here in front of the camera. But they're nothing fancy. They're very basic brushes. They're cheap brushes. I think that was $5, $6, $10, something like that. I'm not going to pay more than $10 for a set like this. But the bristles are stiff, so any stiff bristled brush will work. And all I want to do is I'm going to put little dots using the stiff brush. And I'm starting with my raw umber. It's the darker color, and so that's where I want my rust to be. And then I'm going to come on top here with the burnt sienna. And I'm just going to lightly hit those same areas again. And then finally, I'm going to hit it with that Indian red. And if so that's kind of what you got there, right? So that's my rust spot. Now, I want to do an area that's got maybe some younger rust in it. So I'm going to forego the burnt umber. I'm going to go. I'm sorry, the raw umber, and I'm going to go right to the burnt sienna, and I'm going to put a little patch of it right here. Okay, so the lighter the color, it's going to signify a younger rust. And now I'm going to, with a very very small amount, and this is so easy to overdo, and when you do overdo it, it ruins the effect of what you're trying to do. But I'm going to go in with just a very little bit of the yellow and that orange, and so that is going to add what I'm going to call the new rust. So right on top, so it's going to signify that this incident, whatever it was that damaged this car, was relatively recent. And so for this, because I'm doing such a small patch, I'm going to take a very pointy brush. So there's my pointy brush. And I'm going to start with this yellow. And it kind of looks like I don't know, it kind of looks like a faded pale yellow almost. And I'm just going to put a little tiny dot of it in a couple of places. Okay, and that's it. And then I'm going to wipe that off. And then I'm going to bring in just a small amount of the orange. And I'm going to go over top of that. Okay, and then that's it. That's all we're going to do here. Now, if you don't like the way that looks, like if that looks a little too bright for you, you can come back in with a little bit more of the brown, which is the burnt sienna, and just sort of touch over it a little bit. Now, be careful when you do that, because if you recall from the previous, the paint stays soft and wet for a very long time with the oils, and if you are not careful, all you're going to do is blend your colors together. So there we go. That's representing our newer rust patch. And so I'm gonna do a little bit here on the other side. And so let's say, you know what I want to represent? I want to pretend that this thing was sitting in the dock, and we had a new guy working the forklift, and new guy did not know what new guy was doing. And let's say he was careless, and he went ahead and just put the forks right into the door. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take my raw umber, and I'm going to drag that down the door a little bit so I got a little bit of a smear on it. There we go. And now I'm going to come back in. I'm going to stipple on a little bit of the burnt sienna. And lastly, let's get in here with some of the Indian red. And then right on top of that Indian red, I'm going to hit just a small amount of new rust. And so our door has some battle wounds now. Now you can come back in here and if you wanted to, you can darken up some of these other areas. You can add some darker lines if you wanted a little more pronounced rust spot somewhere. You absolutely can do that. You know, I'm not gonna go too much more on this one just because I kind of want this guy to be a little bit cleaner. So we got some damage on the back side here, you know, and we've got some damage in the door here, and I think we're gonna leave this one alone for now. Okay, so I know this next part is probably going to make some of you upset, but I decided to add a little bit of graffiti to the car. So a while back, I ordered these graffiti markings from Micromark, and they came in. There's a bunch of different sizes in here, but these ones seemed perfect for this box car. So I put the decal on here. I use the Micro Set and Microsol decal sets to do that. You can use any of the products, but it's my first time trying these. They really did a nice job conforming the decal to the model. And the reason I say this is going to upset some of you is because some folks don't like to do the graffiti because it you know, it's basically the dregs of society, you know, tagging stuff. But let's face it, our trains go through, you know, lawless lands like California and you know, Oregon and Washington. So you know, this thing's been all over the road, and you know, I'm sure went into some place where law and order's not present, and you're gonna get some graffiti. And so if we're gonna do real, let's do real all the way, and let's get that on there. So put some graffiti on here as well. That's an optional step. You don't have to do it. I know some people don't, you know, want to glorify breaking the law, but like I said, it's part of, you know, what you're going to see in the real world. So I just added it. Okay, so let's go through, you know, where we got to with these different techniques here. So the most abused looking car is our enamel and oils, and that's it right there. And don't forget, we got the scratches on the coupler, so that looks good. And then we slide on down here. Next is our airbrush. That's our airbrush version. The colors are subtle. You could go more if you wanted to. I find that it's very easy to overdo weathering and make all of your cars look like this, and you know, that's not quite realistic. So I kind of, you know, try to stay away from that as on all my cars. So this is a nice lighter look. And then I think somewhere that's, you know, probably even less than that is there's our powdered look. So 3 different techniques to get you to kind of the same place. You know, you got it weathered, and then obviously that graffiti option is, you know, that's your choice. Not necessary, but it does add a little something, especially on this, you know, really what I'm going to call jacked up car. But like I said, you know, this is all something that these are all techniques that you can use. You can use any of these together, from the airbrush to the powders to the oils. They all work interchangeably, and they work on different types of cars too. So you just want to take a look at some photographs and see, what it looks like. If you don't feel like freehanding it, like I did, then you want to actually model an actual car and what it actually looks like. You can certainly do that. So we're going to do that when I get around to doing some locomotives here, which will be the next video. I'm not going to introduce any new topics, but I am going to take what I got here, and I'm going to show you how I do locomotives. Once again, you can find multiple videos on YouTube and I'm sure other places that you can look at how folks do their weathering, and there'll be some similarities, there'll be some differences, but at the end of the video, basically, this is really about you taking initiative and the courage to just do it. Grab an old model, something that you're not, you don't care about if it gets destroyed necessarily. You may find a love for an old model because you weather it and it looks way better than it did. So, just you take the chance. I guess is what I'm telling you. Take the chance, get out there, spray paint. I know this was a really long series, and I'm going to drop, I dropped all 3 videos at the same time because it wasn't a matter of making y'all wait for it. It was just a matter of getting these videos done so that everyone can see it and take away from it what you can. So that's what I hope you do. You don't have to copy my techniques. These work for me. They may not work for you. So do your own thing. Take what I did and take the next step. Make it yours, and the results will be whatever you do. You can make it look natural. You don't have to get crazy with it. So good luck. Give it a shot. If you got any additional questions, something I breezed over, something you want to see, I know I talked a lot through these videos, but it's more about just getting the guts to go and do it. So everybody have a good time weathering your stuff. And like I said, if you got any individual questions, as always, go ahead, leave them in the comments, and I will answer them the best I can.